Welcome everyone to once again to the meeting 8 of the Environmental Justice Council. My name is Kessel and I am with ERG, a contractor supporting this event. I will first start by providing meeting logistics for our Zoom attendees. This presentation is available with interpretation in Spanish, Portuguese, Mandarin Chinese, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese, and Cape Verdean Creole. Zoom attendees should use the interpretation channels to find their correct language, indicated by the globe icon in their Zoom control panel. English speakers should select English so they can hear any translated comments. Closed captioning is available and is auto-generated. You can select it by clicking on the CC icon in your Zoom control panel. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. If you would like to use telephone audio, please click on the small arrow next to the microphone icon, select Switch to Phone Audio, and follow the directions provided. Please email meetings@erg.com with any technical questions related to meeting logistics. If you would like a translated version of the presentation slides, please go to the Environmental Justice Council website, a link of which will be dropped in the chat. You will find a translated set of presentation slides there. Please submit any questions in the Q&A box. If you would like to make a comment during the public comment time, please raise your hand and I can unmute you. If you are commenting in another language, please speak into your language channel and your interpreter will translate the comment into English. Or if you do not wish to speak out loud, you can type the comment into the Q&A box and I will read it aloud. For our speakers, please speak slowly to accommodate the interpreters. Please use simple language and minimize use of acronyms. I would like to remind the council members to only use the chat function for meeting logistics and no other communication in accordance with the open meeting law. We are also asking all council members to leave their cameras on for the whole meeting. We would like to thank Green Roots for helping us find this venue. At the venue in person, we are providing snacks, including water, granola bars, clementines, and pretzels. They are available in the cafeteria. Please eat only in the cafeteria, as food and drink are not allowed in the music room, which is where we are currently set up. There's also an overflow room in the library. That is it for housekeeping, and now I'd like to turn it over to Rishi Reddy, the Director of Environmental Justice in the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Is this the AV system working? Great. Okay. Welcome to the 8th meeting of the Environmental Justice Council, whose members are appointed by the Governor's Office to advise the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, also called by the acronym EEA, about ways to promote and achieve environmental justice principles across the Commonwealth. I am Rishi Reddy, the chairperson of the council and the director of environmental justice at EEA. I'm thrilled to convene this meeting in person today and have it also accessible through Zoom format. Thank you to all the EJ council members for your attendance today, and especially for those who came in person. Thank you to the Chelsea residents who've come out to observe the deliberations of the council and also to engage with council members about environmental and public health issues in your neighborhood. We appreciate your time and your assistance in helping us do our jobs better. If we can move on to the agenda slide. We have a packed agenda for tonight. I'm delighted to say that we will have welcome remarks from our new Secretary of EEA, Rebecca Tepper. We'll have an opportunity for the EJC members to introduce themselves to her. And thank you for taking time to be with us tonight, Secretary. Later, we will vote to approve the prior meeting minutes and confirm our quorum. I'll have some very brief announcements and will probably not use the entire 10 minutes that I have for those announcements, which will allow us to jump to a presentation by our Acting General Counsel of EEA, Reed Porter. I invited Reed Porter to be with us today because of requests from EJ Council members to explore whether the council, as operating under the open meeting law, can split up into smaller type work groups to look more deeply into the issues that affect the definition of EJ population. After Mr. Porter's presentation, I hope we will have some insight as to how we do that and a discussion about that possibility. Next, we'll discuss the draft EEA EJ strategy. For those of you who have come in through this outer hall, we had booklets of the draft EJ strategy available in hard copy and in translation at the sign-in desk. Our goal for tonight is to have a set of comments that the members of this council can agree upon to submit as coming from the EJC formally, and to vote on that document on containing those comments about submission, if possible. We'll have some time to hear comments from the attendees who are here in person tonight, individuals who want to come up and speak on the microphone. We will also run a mic over to you if that's possible, if we need to, if you raise your hand, please. Are we still good, Kessel? Yeah, okay. We'll plan to conclude the meeting around 8:30. We were informed that a few of our remote interpreters from around the world will need to sign off at 8 o'clock, either because of sleep schedules or because of other commitments. So please keep that in mind. And with that, I'll turn it over to Secretary Tepper. Thank you again for coming today. I see the podium to you, and I know that the members of the council are eager to meet you.
Hi, good morning, good evening, everyone. It's been a long day. Thank you so much for coming out here today in person and online. My name is Rebecca Tepper. I am the new Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs for the state of Massachusetts. It's been quite a whirlwind a bit of the last 3 weeks, so I'm still getting my feet under the ground, but I really wanted this to be one of my first meetings that I attended outside of the office. So thank you very much for having me here today. I did want to tell you a little bit about some of our goals as an administration, and to thank you for the time and effort that you're taking out of your day to attend these meetings. And it's I know it's a significant time commitment for you, and this is important to our agency to help get assistance and advice on the actions that we're taking from this group. And the legislature specifically set up this group so that we would have an opportunity to hear from different voices and to make sure that our actions are informed by a large range of voices. So thank you all for doing this and taking the time. This is an important time. We're in the middle of a clean energy transition. And we have an obligation to right some past wrongs and to create good paying jobs. And we have an opportunity to build healthier communities. This opportunity are there for our taking, and I think it's important that we do it right. The needs of Black, Brown, and immigrant communities will be at the center of our policies, not an afterthought. The governor has instructed us to do that, and we will do so. The work of the council is critical and is the start of an important and ongoing dialogue. As I mentioned, it's been quite a bit of a few weeks for me, but I can already share that we have exciting ideas and innovation and some changes coming soon. We are, of course, right now in the budget season, and environmental justice is a guidepost in our approach to that process. We're thinking about our structure internally at EEA as well. And I know it's important for you all to have a point of contact in our agency and people who are directly dedicated to this work, and we are committed to doing that. We're going to have more on our efforts soon that I hope I'll be able to share with everyone shortly. For now, I don't really want to talk very long because I see you have a very long agenda and important agenda today. I want to thank you for your efforts and for your analysis of this document that you're going to be looking at today. And I have read it recently, and I also read some of the draft comments, and I thought they were very thoughtful. And it's clear that people have spent a significant amount of time with this document, and we very much appreciate it. So I will say thank you, and I will interested to hear what you all have to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Am I still on? Is this good? Okay. Thank you, Secretary. I think I will sit here so that we can talk about the rest of the agenda and sort of conduct the meeting in this awkward virtual format in this way, so that we will be able to see folks who are on the screen as well as folks who are in the audience. And does that seem to work for the council members who are here in person? Okay, great. All right. So the draft minutes for the December 13th meeting were emailed to council members so that we'd all have a chance to review them. And I just want some feedback on them. Does anyone have any amendments to those before we take a vote on approving them? No? Okay. If that's the case, then I'd like to open the floor for a motion to adopt the minutes. If I could have a motion from somebody here.
So moved. Move to adopt the minutes.
Thank you. We have a motion from Lydia to adopt. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Thank you,
if you can hear.
Madeline. So under the rules for conducting remote and virtual hybrid public meetings under the Massachusetts open meeting law, we have to vote by roll call. So a simple majority in favor is what's required to approve the minutes. So let me call out the names of folks, and please call out a yay or a nay. Kalila Barnett.
I'm gonna abstain only because I wasn't present for the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kalila. Madeline Cook.
Yes.
Melissa Ferretti.
Yes.
Melissa, we need to hear you. That's the only problem with.
I was wondering, my audio
Okay.
is on.
Okay, you can give us a thumbs up. Okay, Melissa's giving us a thumbs up. Okay. Cheryl Hawley,
sure.
please. Here yet.
Yes.
Caroline Hahn, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Caroline. Namrata Kapoor, please.
I think I'm going to likewise abstain since I
Abstain.
wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Namrata. And Lydia Lowe, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Marcos, Luna, and Peter Mathe have told us that they will not be able to attend tonight's meeting. So I will, for my part, say yay to approve. Pat Spence, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Pat. And Ari Zorn, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Ari. Okay, so we have voted to approve these minutes. These will be the official minutes for the last meeting, and they'll be translated into the languages that we have been doing, 6 languages, and posting those online for people to access. With that, the next piece of our agenda, I want to note that we are at quorum with, I believe, 8 members here. So thank you for that. And we can move on to the next piece, which is that we have a presentation from Reed Porter. But before that, I will make a few announcements regarding the draft EJ strategy, which the council will be discussing later on this evening, and which we also have copies of outside, as I said, in hard copy. Our public comment period is open until February 17th, which is a week from Friday. In the course of our public comment period, we are accepting comments in writing through an online survey or by email or by even postal mail as well. Those surveys for hard copy submissions are also available at the sign-in desk. So if that's what you would prefer, they are available in English and Spanish. We have also been gathering oral comments through public listening sessions And we have held those in January via Zoom. In December and also last week, we held sessions in Springfield and in Roxbury. Next week, we will have our final in-person session in Chinatown. That address is 885 Washington Street. So please come to that session. It will be the final one of our in-person listening sessions. So right now, I will hand this over to Reed Porter, whom I hope is online and waiting to give us a brief presentation on the open meeting law. The purpose of the presentation for the council members here is to decide whether we want to work in subgroups, whatever form that subgroup might take, to get our work done. We have mentioned that in past meetings. Do we want those work groups to be informal ones, or do we want them to be formal subcommittees? That decision has implications, which Reed will explain to us what the difference is between them. If we decide to go that route, we would need to identify these subgroups, whether they're working groups or subcommittees. And I did have an email from Marcos Luna, who couldn't make it tonight, and he did want me to say this piece at the beginning of the meeting was that he wanted to extend his apologies and greetings to you, Secretary Tepper, and the residents of Chelsea who might be in attendance. And he wanted to say that whatever comes of this conversation around the subgroups, he would be happy to lead one of those groups regarding EJ mapping and other visualizations, if that's the route that we decide to go. He just wanted to let folks here know that, because we all know his area of expertise and how needed it is for the work of this group. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to Reed.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can read, yes.
Excellent. I've lost the ability to see all of you, which is a little bit disconcerting, but that's okay. I will push ahead, but since I'm not able to see, Rishi, if you could interrupt me if there's a need from somebody in the room.
I will do so.
Thank you. So my name is Reed Porter. I am the acting general counsel of the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and I am honored to be with you tonight and to be invited to attend. I regret that I'm not able to be there in person due to a personal commitment that I had today, but hopefully I will catch you next time. I'm here because Rishi approached me to say that there's interest in advancing the work of the EJC outside of formal meetings. And my intent here is to help the council members understand how they might do that in compliance with the open meeting law. If we could go to the next slide. Oh, one more, please. Thank you. Before we get into it, just a few words on background. I know you've all hopefully had training on what this is, but some background is always helpful. The open meeting law is a law that applies only to public bodies, and it requires that public bodies meetings be conducted in a public manner. All meetings of a public body have to be open to the public, and that includes any deliberation, which is defined in the statute as any oral or written communication through any medium, including email, between or among a quorum of a public body. A public body includes the EJC. So this meeting that we are currently at is a public meeting. And because there's a quorum present, and that's a simple majority, in this case, at least 7 of 12, this is a legal public meeting, and it is a deliberation. Next slide, please. So let's turn to the question of what happens if there's a smaller group of council members that wish to get together. Is that itself a public body? And the definition of public body refers to multiple member bodies that are created to advise or make recommendations to a public body. And that's a subcommittee. A subcommittee has to be created by the public body, and it can be done in several ways, for example, by a vote. So a public body might vote to create a subcommittee or a task force on a particular matter with just 2 members on it. Even though that is less than a quorum in a particular case, that would still be a public body, and the meetings of that subcommittee would be subject to the open meeting law. However, subcommittees have to be created by a public body. The Attorney General's office had said that a gathering of individuals on their own initiative does not create a subcommittee. And that kind of a gathering is not subject to requirements such as posting an agenda 48 hours in advance and other requirements of the law. So the Attorney General, when there are complaints, reviews those complaints, and it really looks at whether the public body intended to create a multiple member body or a subcommittee. If there was an intent to create a subcommittee, that subcommittee is itself a public body. And if not, then not. So that's pretty straightforward. The trick is in the details. Next slide. And this is where some examples can come in helpful. So we have 3 examples here. And in this first one, this was a complaint about an action by the Brookline Select Board. The Select Board was working on revisions to a policy, and it voted to accept some, but to look for some revisions to other portions of the policy. And to do that, they needed to do some additional consultation and redlining of a document outside of a Select Board meeting. A volunteer was sought to work on making that happen and bringing it back to the next meeting of the Select Board the following month. One person volunteered and another volunteered to help them. The quorum, there was 5 members on that board, so 2 members of the Select Board was less than a quorum, and they volunteered. They then went out and they talked to the police chief, and got input from him as well. And the Attorney General's office said that was a voluntary initiative, and therefore they did not violate the open meeting law by meeting outside of a public meeting. The next example is really close to the sort of activity that it sounds like EJC members might be interested in undertaking. This is a complaint about the Massport Community Advisory Committee, whose members of their own accord formed municipal working groups to discuss with community members concerns about flight paths into and out of Logan, particularly an issue that may be of concern in East Boston. And in that case, the Attorney General's office noted that, again, those working groups had been created by members of the committee of their own accord rather than by the committee itself. And although there may have been multiple members of the committee present at some of these municipal work group meetings, that there was never a quorum present. Therefore, there was no deliberation and no violation of the open meeting law. So that's another excellent example. The third example is an example of what can go wrong. And this is a case involving the Concord Long Range Planning Committee. This committee was working on a survey and sought volunteers to work together on fixing the survey. 2 individuals volunteered, and then the committee itself formally agreed by consensus, though not by a vote, interestingly, that it was a good idea for those 2 people to go ahead and work on the survey. And the Attorney General's office said, in that case, the public body had agreed to and created the survey committee, and it therefore did have to follow the open meeting law. And because they didn't do public notice and agendas and other requirements of the open meeting law, they had been in violation. Next slide, please. So with those examples in hand, let's think about some key things to think about when trying to decide whether a group is or is not a subcommittee subject to the open meeting law. If a quorum of the public body is present, and in the case of the EJC, that would be if there are 7 people in a room together, that is a quorum, and therefore the meeting would be a deliberation of the EJC and would be subject to the open meeting law. Similarly, if the EJC was to vote or direct its members to undertake business for it, or agree around the room or around the Zoom that it's a good idea for particular people to take a particular action by consensus, that is likely to be viewed by the Attorney General as an action to create a subcommittee, and that means that that subcommittee would be subject to the open meeting law. That's not the end of the world. Of course, public meetings are great, and it would just require that the meetings be conducted in public and meet the other requirements of the Act. In other cases, a voluntarily constituted group will not be a subcommittee if the public body doesn't agree as a group to the creation of the group. It's truly a voluntary activity. If members are working at their own initiative, they're not assigned to do a particular task or to participate in a particular way. If the group is really working on fact-finding or synthesis rather than developing a recommendation that the public body is simply asked to adopt, that will also be viewed, the more like a public body that smaller group acts, the more likely the Attorney General might be to say they're actually doing the work of the committee or the council in this case. And finally, reporting findings from a small group to a public body such as the council and the use of that information by the council would not make a group a subcommittee. So there's no issue with folks going out on their own, meeting sometimes with a small group of other council members or with outside experts to come up with understanding additional facts or thinking about different options that the EJC might want to consider as an entire group. Those can then be brought back and considered. And the final slide, please.
Reed, you have about 10 minutes left.
Perfect. So just to close off, let's think about a practical example for how this might work in practice. If a group does not want to be subject to the open meeting law, the public body might discuss the need to advance its work beyond the limited time that's available in meetings. I think that's certainly something that the EJC may be facing. One or more of the members of that group may volunteer to lead working groups to consider particular issues that are relevant to the public body and take or not input from outside experts or the public. If there's no vote taken and no consensus on particular or assignment of particular tasks, and the work groups collect and synthesize information and prepare material to come back to the EJC or to another public body without a quorum. And the public body then hears the presentations or considers reports at a public meeting and votes in accordance with the open meeting law to adopt a course of action based on those. There has been no violation of the open meeting law. I fear that last sentence was a little bit long and hopefully you stuck with me to the end. But with that, if there are any questions, and I hope there are, I'd be happy to take any.
So here's our chance to ask EEA, legal staff, the questions that we were talking about at our last meeting about whether or not we would be able to split up into less than a quorum, to talk about issues that we really wanted to delve into. So for instance, some of the issues around metrics, if I recall, some of the issues around the mapping that we wanted to find out more information about. And to say, if that seemed like something we want to do we want to do it in a way where we would have one or two people in the EJC volunteer to lead a group, which would give folks the ability to tap into the many areas of expertise you have, colleagues and peers whom you work with in your areas of expertise, and gain some of their input on some of the issues that we've been trying to figure out? Or do we want to make this a subgroup, a subcommittee just of the EJC to talk about, like say 3 or 4 of us officially given the mandate, go over there and look at demographics in terms of EJ maps, figure out what that means for this group and how we're going to look at the EJ maps definition, and then come back and have a formal recommendation to the rest of the committee or to the rest of the council. Or, and Reed, tell me if I'm characterizing this correctly, if we went the informal work group method, we could have 1 or 2 people volunteer to say, I want to find out more information about, this mapping or demographic issue. I'm going to talk with a bunch of people I know and come back with a document that is a fact-finding type of document that we would then be able to use at the council to make some of the decisions we have to make. I'm thinking particularly about the percentage thresholds for the definition of EJ population, or, where are we looking correctly at low income in terms of the Massachusetts population? Where have we not captured limited English proficiency folks accurately? How are we going to deal with indigenous populations in terms of the map? Like, where are we missing the mark? So these would be the smaller areas we would split into to do a more deep dive into these issues. The way that the federal maps integrate with our definition of EJ population around the issue of race is one that we'll probably have to look at as well. So these are the types of issues that I think have come up in prior discussions of this group that, we should consider in this question.
It sounds to me from what the council was saying from that the key, it seems to me that it will be more efficient and less cumbersome if we can break into some, working conversations and bring information back so that everything does not have to be online and multiple,
And have the weight of a deliberation in a way.
Yeah, and that we're not deliberating, and making any decisions there. And that the key then is that it's not a formal decision by our group, but that, there can be volunteering, and then the rest of us know who to join, if that's what we're interested in, and that it doesn't have to be limited to just the EJ council members as well. So then, people would be free to tap other community members, other experts, et cetera. Right? So I like that idea. It just puts a little bit more responsibility on us as individuals then for people to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to take, I'm going to be a point person for this. Good for Marcos.
We already got one. We didn't even have got the volunteer.
I don't know
in.
who else is ready, you know, to do that, because I feel like we're all just learning about these issues. I mean, I'm definitely interested in learning more about the Indigenous community issues, but I don't have a lot, you know, to offer, so I wouldn't, would certainly look to somebody else to be that point person. Yeah, I just don't feel like I have enough knowledge to volunteer for one of these.
I think the other question that comes up for me is, certainly I think trying to do this a little bit less formally than the subcommittee structure seems to make sense for a lot of different reasons. But if we did go with the more informal kind of working group structure, does that mean that people can volunteer at different stages of the work? So, having somebody lead the working group, but then having kind of people join and contribute and discuss as they are able, or as they learn new information that might be relevant to that working group. I guess my question there is that, would that be okay? And maybe that's for Reed, for the council. But I think that would be helpful to know, because I think that, everybody's kind of commitments ebb and flow. And so that might be a good way to kind of have enough contributions from a broader group than just one set group from the very beginning.
To the extent that's a question for me, I would say that what you're describing sounds a lot like a volunteer activity that folks are taking up of their own initiative, right? That what you say is true, and folks certainly would be able to step in and out of out of things if they so desire. So that would not cause an issue for open meeting law compliance.
I guess in the room, if I can ask you to push your buttons or push to talk until a green light comes on.
Oh,
It's not, it's live? Okay.
It's not like.
Okay, then
Just move there was some sort of.
move the mics closer to you. It's very soft online.
Okay.
I think for me, one question I have is, do we have to choose one or the other? Because depending on the topic and what needs to be researched, I could see us using kind of both options. So that's one question I have. And then the thing that I guess I don't feel totally clear about is how the link between, how do we actually in practice link the work of the working group? I think the subgroup is the formal one. I can't remember what the names are, but it's the volunteer group that's doing, kind of work on the side, bringing information back. How does that become like linked and officially on the agenda for kind of formal deliberation on the committee? Because I know that for the public agendas, there's like kind of very specific timelines in terms of, publishing the agenda and all of that. So it seems like that would need to be tightly coordinated.
Reed, is there an issue with that, with what Kalila just brought up?
Generally, the bringing back and sending out of of tasks, bringing stuff back to the committee or to the council, generally does not pose a problem. It's really the question around the creation of the subcommittee is where the open meeting law rubber hits the road. The couple of examples that I just talked through, some of them included a chair saying, does anybody want to volunteer to take this task and bring it back to us later, right? So that kind of a connection is not necessarily incorrect from a legal perspective. It's when there's more and more connections and sort of tasking of an outside group to do the work of the public body that it will look more and more like a subcommittee has been created.
But at any point, couldn't that working group, if the working group feels ready to bring something back, then wouldn't we just notify Rishi and say, you know, can we put this on the agenda? That seems-
And I mean, we should at least, that's not too formal, right? Read, like that would be
That would be fine.
fine. Like all of the working groups, like everyone go off, do your own thing. And then we'll all report back into each other in terms of what the findings were and who you talked to in the outside world, right?
That's right.
It seems to be primarily a question of transparency, as long as you're being sort of really transparent about the fact that this was not delegated, that it was a volunteer initiative, and that you're clear that there's communication back to the group, but no decision-making authority outside of the group. Is that,
And no quorum.
and no quorum, yeah. Is that a fair summary of
I
the
think that's
hot
fair.
buttons? Yeah, so I mean,
So
yeah,
then I'm just, okay, so then I'm just still unclear about. Couldn't we then, like, this is very confusing. But so can we actually like have a conversation tonight about like areas that need further research? Can those can be identified in this meeting?
Mhm.
And then tomorrow, I could send an email and say, hey, Lydia, do you want to work with me on this? Like, is
We
that
could
what we're
even, you
talking
could
about?
even say that tonight. We just don't assign people. Like you could vote, if like I could say, okay, I think one area I could contribute to our thinking is around language accessibility. So, you know, I'm interested in talking with other people about that. You know, if anybody, and, you know, so I could say that, or two people could say that, okay, you know, we'll do that. Then that's sort of like, but it's not, we're not assigning,
So you can express interest.
yeah, and we're not
Right.
assigning anybody
Okay.
and making formal decisions to assign anyone. And then we never convene a quorum.
and never have more than 7 of us talking
Yeah.
about it.
Mhm. That's right. And if I could add, I think it's probably better to do it at the meeting, to talk
Right.
about this at the meeting, because
Otherwise,
Because it's
and-
transparent then. yeah.
and an email to each other after the meeting is a deliberation. So that itself could be an open meeting law issue if
Wow.
there's emails
Wow.
happening.
So
outside.
I think it would be a deliberation if if that email went to 7 people to
Mhm.
our
Right.
simple
Yeah.
majority,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
which with emails, as we know, is like just click forward, you know, and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
so I think that's what I want to say. So I mean, we're sort of nearing time on this conversation, so I don't know that we need to break off into formal subcommittees or think about what those, you know,
Mhm.
informal work groups would be now, but I wanted Reed to come in and explain this to us with some
Mhm.
authority and detail so that it was a tool for us. It's come up several times in our 7-8 meetings so far,
Mhm.
and now I feel
I think I get it.
like we have a tool, right?
Yeah.
We can decide how we want to deal with it. I don't know.
yeah, it's very imperfect. I mean, it just.
It's very
just-
gray.
Well, I guess also just, I mean, this is just my little editorial comment, but just kind of like practically for public bodies where you're asking residents to, you know, spend time making decisions or recommendations about things. And then, you know, doing side conversations where there needs to, like, additional time and resources and capacity are needed to do that, just like very practically, it just
Mhm.
seems like you run up against this
Mhm.
challenge of like who actually has the capacity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just,
Yes.
it's a systemic problem that for engaging with regular folks around getting
For sure.
getting
And,
things done.
right. And how much time people have and whether we can compensate them for that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
would
hear that.
also
clearly.
say that, you know, if we're gonna go down this path, just to be mindful of the outcomes of, you know, what is the outcome of that working group? What are we meeting for? And kind of just making sure that, sounds like any finding from a working group can be presented to to this group for consideration. but we have to be careful about recommendations, correct? Just, I mean, another line there.
Reed, what do you think the line is on recommendations? Because the IAC works this way, and then they have their 4 informal working groups come together with, you know, some type of fact finding. I mean, what is that line on recommendations versus just information?
It's a little bit of a gray area. I wouldn't say that there's a hard and fast rule on it. But the definition of public body does refer to advising or making recommendations to the public body. So if I was, looking to avoid that, but still provide useful information, I would suggest things like options with some pros and cons, or sort of overall conclusions from the fact finding that could be discussed, and then a recommended motion could be developed at the meeting on the basis of those inputs.
Yeah, that's really helpful because, what we want to avoid is meeting for the sake of meeting and discussing for the sake of discussing, but we want to have some meaningful, again, outcomes of those efforts and that inform this group in a meaningful way. And so just having us all be on the same page around, how we take the findings and turn them into something useful for us without violating the open meeting laws.
I see that we're at time. If anybody has a last question for Reed, please ask it now. Otherwise, I will move on. But I hope people feel like we got a little bit more information on this potential.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. Thank you so much then, Reed. Thanks for.
Very welcome.
Okay. So I will move on now to the next agenda item, which is the EJ Council comments on the EJ draft strategy that was put out by EEA in November of 2022. So in our last meeting, when we discussed this, which happened in November and December, first in November, and then our second meeting where we discussed this in December. In the November meeting, we decided that there would be a value in this council submitting a set of formal comments on the draft EJ strategy. So we wanted to do that as a formal set of comments. In the December meeting, we discussed more elaborately what the comments might be. And also in that December meeting, we set aside about half of the meeting to receive stakeholder comments about what their concerns generally were regarding EJ issues in their neighborhood, and then specifically about the draft EJ strategy in particular and the way that it was worded and partitioned off. So those were 2 areas in which we collected some comments. Individual members of this council also sent me their comments. And then with the help of our consultants, we collected all of these comments together from these 2 meetings and from the individual set of comments into the document that you have in front of you, which is the Environmental Justice Council member table of comments, which I think everybody has. So this is an attempt to consolidate and prioritize what everybody said. And you were all sent this table and participated in sort of categorizing the comments that you agreed with. And for folks out in the audience, there is a copy of this document in Spanish and in English available out on the table for anybody who wants to follow along and has an opinion. You need one. Okay. Okay, so I'm hoping that for a chunk of this following time until about 7:40, we can go through this document and prioritize what we want to submit as our comments and choose the ones that we might need to have more discussion on. That's what people were asked to do before this meeting. So these are a lot of comments for sure. And what I was hoping to do with this document was to be able to say that some of these are really easy. We know we want to submit them in a formal set of comments to EEA on the strategy. Others, we would like to set aside for discussion at this meeting. So I was a little bit surprised when we got a lot of notations from folks saying that, hey, I want to discuss this a little more, and that I thought there would be more agreement than there was. So one of the things that we have to do, I think, at the very top of this conversation is figure out how we're going to deal with this number of comments. That's the first thing. And then I also want to point out that whatever folks don't agree on or that we can't come to consensus about as submitting as a joint comment, those can always be submitted individually. They can be submitted on the part of your organization that you may be working with in the EJ space. So these are the options that we have in terms of dealing with this. In the document that you have, you'll see that things that were, that some of them were marked by some folks as saying remove or include them with modification. And if you look at some of those, I would highlight like comment 8, comment 10, comment 13. Some of these had more discussion pieces next to them under the notes section. So one option that we could do is go down, find those troublesome comments and see whether we want to include them. So that may be a path forward, and whatever we don't get to, we can include the remainder as our formal comments, and then say, we'll get through whatever we can get through for tonight. The other option that we can have is that we can have a discussion about, so that's one option. The other option we can do today is perhaps talk about the metrics piece, in these broad categories. Perhaps talk about the way, there was a number of comments that talked about the way that the strategy was organized, that there was too much redundancy in the, from one chapter to another because of the different agencies that were involved. So we could have a discussion about these general pieces, and then rework some of this, and then say we'll come together for a shorter meeting later if that's what we want to do about being able to come to consensus on a final document. So I don't know, that's the first thing. I just want us to talk about that for a couple of minutes. How do folks want to do this?
Can you also just give us an idea, maybe this was covered in the last meeting. So when these comments are submitted, are we expecting that's going to be part of what gets changed and updated in the document? Like, what's the time frame and process for where these comments go, I guess is my question.
Thank you for that clarifying question, Namrata. So the document that we would submit as EJC comments on the strategy is sort of us talking to EEA and the secretary to say, this is what we saw in the strategy. You might want to think about this. That doesn't mean that EEA will take those comments, or it might mean that EEA and the EJ office looks at them and says, hey, this is a great idea. Let's definitely take that. And so we're just submitting it to them to consider. We saw this from our areas of expertise. Please look again, or this is a good job, or you might want to do it this way. So there's an aspect to this which is a bit like some of the comments here seemed like as if folks thought we were going to actually shape the final document, and that may or may not be the case. What we're doing is submitting thoughts in terms of, please consider this. So I don't know if that changes the way people think of this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, hearing that, I do think then it makes sense to focus on the metrics piece, because by having so many things, you have might walk away with nothing, so to speak. And where do we want to use our influence? And I think the most important place would probably be the metrics.
Just another question kind of building off of that is, how will the strategy, how are the different agencies actually using the strategy? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a bunch of things in there. So are they then charged with like coming up with an implementation plan for this strategy? Like what, where does this go in terms of like being a part of daily activities?
The agencies vary widely in the way that their strategies came in. Some of them, I think, have really well thought out implementation plans. Others have formed internal EJ committees that are looking at those issues already in the agency. Other agencies and offices haven't done that. Kalila, so I kind of feel like one of our comments could actually be such and such agency should have a specific implementation plan. Or it doesn't have it now, you know, that could be a comment. Is that kind of what you're asking? Or?
Yeah, because just in terms of, again, trying to determine, okay, like how much time should we spend in this conversation on like all of these comments, which are, you're right, there's a lot of them. Is like, okay, how is that, you know, what's kind of the end of how this document will be used? And yeah, I mean, I guess one comment I have is like, there needs to be, you know, a charge to all of the agencies to have like a clear implementation plan, because if they're all over the place and doing different things, how could you possibly know how to measure progress?
Yes.
Overall, like it's not adequate to be like, oh, coastal zone management is doing this, but then we have the environmental police doing this. Like, no one can make sense of that. So maybe that is also a metrics piece. It's a long way of just agreeing with you.
Excellent. I mean, the other, when I read this, I thought there's so many great ideas in here. There's value, and I'm just like, you know, we don't have enough time to even consider these. I mean, so I'm just going to say this is, I just felt like there was a lot of thought in these comments, and there was value even in seeing that people disagreed about the value of a comment, just because it showed the types of expertise that comes into looking at a document like this. So I found myself going back to our early November decision that we were going to have one document that we were going to submit as comments on the EJ strategy. You know, that the EJC was going to submit these as their. So I don't know, I'm just being honest here that I went back to that piece of like, there's so much thinking here and the different perspectives matter and the areas of that so that's not good in terms of calling the EJ Council to order and then having a vote. I mean, but I'm putting that out there for real, but that's what I thought about this document when I looked at it.
Do you have a sense of like which numbers there was actual like disagreement about? Because some of what I'm noticing in the comments, it's not necessarily people are like, in some places people are expressing, oh, this should be modified, but in other comments, people are not expressing anything that's like in disagreement with the comment. It's more just like additional flavor to what is already been stated. So maybe that could.
So would it be of use to us to sort of, you know, go through the one? So Kalila, given that comment, like, would it be of use for us to like go to comment 8 and have a discussion about that comment? And the topic of it is general, it's about metrics, general metrics. And the comment is specific agencies should be included in the strategy to a greater extent. Well, that's super broad, but you know, the discussion notes there show that, you know, everybody, there was a ton of people that marked that comment is needing greater discussion. So, I mean, we can talk about that, yeah. You know, and no, comment 10 on community engagement. Consider paying communities to engage with the permitting process related to the issue that you just brought up. Yep. Oh, that's great, thank you. Caroline.
Yes, I was actually just wondering, do we also have the list of, were there any that everyone said accept on, or was it just across the board? Everybody had some comment disagreement.
So Caroline, if you go to the document and you see ones that have nothing in the box. So, you know, I'm going to number 25, that has no letters in the box. That means that everybody agreed with that comment. And that comment was add a metric on agency staff demographic, higher percentages. So that number 27, spending and other activities should be reported both in total and relative to total spending for all communities across the Commonwealth, like getting at disproportionality. Training, you know, staff training, all EEA staff training is important. So there's quite a few of those that people did agree on.
I mean, that subgroup.
I mean, the other way to kind of whittle down the sheer number of comments we should discuss is to take a look at the ones that have the, you know, just are in agreement they should be included, but have a slight comment or modification, and see which ones are just kind of adding flavor, like you were saying, Leila, to the comment itself. Because looking through, there are a lot here that just have one, it looked like one person that wanted to include with a modification, and then it's a compliments previous comments about training. So, you know, that's not really a modification. It's just stating that.
Yes.
So it might be worthwhile just kind of quickly going through and checking off the ones that seem to be
In agreement for
ready
now.
for agreement.
Why don't we do that and see how far we can get, right? Like
Yeah.
we'll just do it. Okay.
And then there's others for deeper discussion, obviously. but-
Okay, and we can mark those and then we can decide, we'll take 5 minutes at the end and see how we want to handle it. Okay, so I'll just read out the first one. Purpose under the topic of purpose and use. This document is long and redundant. There's lots of good information, tactics and strategy articulated, but missing a compelling. So what's the umbrella that threads it all together? What's the vision and how will this make the agencies and Commonwealth better? Why should people care?
Mhm.
So, I mean,
that one has someone that may think that it's worth removing.
Yeah.
So it's really starting at 2 with just one comment that says.
I see
include
what you're saying.
modification,
Okay. I see
So
what
that
you're
we
saying.
don't have to go through every single.
Okay, gotcha.
one and then come back to those that
Okay.
might have some question about removal.
Okay,
So skip over anything that has a B in it.
Exactly.
okay, that's a great way to proceed. Thank you. So we can just,
So-
I'm not even sure I need to read it
No.
into the record. Let's just talk about 2. Are folks okay with that comment as it's stated there? Anybody disagree with that comment as it's stated or want to add something? Going
The
one-
comment or the discussion notes and just.
The
both of
discussion,
them
I think the
together?
discussion
Oh,
notes,
okay.
right? Because that's what's going to tell us whether there's something substantive that is a modification to the comment.
I
Anybody?
don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem,
No,
meaning you don't have a problem with the discussion note or you don't have a problem with the way the comment is
Neither, I
stated for now?
think either
Yeah,
are fine.
exactly.
Great. Does
Yeah.
anybody online have a problem with it? No. Okay, so we're including 2. Okay, so number 3. Anybody have a problem with this one? No. Anybody online?
No.
Okay, so we'll include that. We'll skip 4 because somebody wanted to take it out. Number 5 on metrics. And we've got the matrix as well on 14. I don't see anybody wanting to take out that. I think we're including number 5, right? Nobody?
Yep.
Okay, so we're,
Although I don't really understand what the point of the matrix is.
Yeah, I found
The
that a
ma-
little
Yeah, me too.
dizzying myself.
the matrix, I think, just points out across the agencies what
Who's
topic
doing
has
what.
been addressed at each one, so that we can look at, hey, that's an important topic. Every single agency should address that.
Mhm.
I have to say, I like the matrix because I feel like it's a quick and dirty, easy way.
But is our comment then is suggesting that there be, like, use this matrix? Right? Is that what the summary of the comment is?
right.
Because right now it's just outlining
This matrix,
where there's overlap.
this matrix exhibits what was found in the agencies. I don't,
I think the comment should be to use
Yeah,
this
that's
matrix
that's what I mean.
to
yes.
seek more uniform adoption of the EJ
For
strategy.
example, here's the matrix.
All right, I'm
Illustrative
taking
of
this
what you might
down.
Want to consider.
please use this matrix to adopt a more
Implement.
uniform,
Yeah.
Yeah,
to adopt uniformity among the agencies. Does that capture it?
yeah,
Okay,
that was. Put that together.
okay.
I don't know if you did that.
I mean, it's not gonna all be uniform because they address some different things, but it's helpful, to clarify and standardize certain common strategies.
So number 6 is going in. Nobody said to take that one out, so we're going to include that. Number 7, which was mostly consider building this comment into number 6 above. I think we can just include it, right?
Consolidate.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
okay,
kind of
so
the
we were
same
including
comment.
7. All right. Number 8. Basically about the specific agencies, and then a number of thoughts about which agencies should be emphasized and which not.
And so that one seems like we might want to have more discussion, whereas 9 just kind of seems like we should just say check and move on to the next one that only has 1 C.
Yeah.
I- Yeah, I agree. So let's accept 9, let's include 9,
Yep.
and then let's discuss 10. So some of these are questions. What are other agencies doing? Not everyone knows. We'd like to encourage this policy initiative to include all state agencies. So I think that second bullet is actually included in that comment in the way that it's written.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna cross that out if people agree to that. Are they okay with taking out that second bullet?
Yes.
Emphasize on DPH. Would we like to say that?
Wait, sorry, which one?
Emphasize DPH. I mean, this is the way that public health and environment is interlaced always. I mean, we could easily just bring that comment over.
I mean, I don't, so like from the perspective, I work in sustainable transportation, so I'm not sure why I would say emphasis on DPH over say DOT. So I don't know if we get into sort of a little pitting one issue against another by saying emphasis on one versus the other. So I would vote not to say emphasis, just I like the
Yeah,
broader.
So
I
so
agree.
where other folks are at as well. How about online?
I agree with what we've discussed there as well.
Ari, Caroline, are you guys all okay with Pat?
I'm okay with that.
Okay,
Yes.
so we won't make a hierarchy. Okay,
I mean, this last bullet on here, that one, the longer sentence, given the scope. It seems to me that that sort of gets to like the spirit of this comment is just that, you know, implementing the EJ strategies. Like basically that in real life, there's overlap between these, you know, these issues. And, you know, kind of the outcomes that we are seeking are not just like contained to, you know, these particular agencies. So I feel like the comment is just, it's about like other agencies should be considering adopting this or being in alignment with it or something. Like that's kind of how I'm reading this.
And maybe the modification to the comment can be that last kind of clause of that final sentence. There's an opportunity, yeah, to recommend that EA, et cetera,
I like that.
after, you know, specific agencies should be included in a strategy to a greater extent, period. There is an opportunity to recommend.
I like that. How do others feel about that?
I think that's a great suggestion.
How about online?
Agreed.
Okay. All right, so we will add at the bottom of the comment, we'll add that last snippet. There is an opportunity to recommend onto the end of that. Okay. All right, so then we're going to include
Or I
8.
think we are recommending it. It's not, these comments are the opportunity. So we are saying this
Gotcha.
is the recommendation. Yeah.
We recommend that. Gotcha. Thank you, Kalila. Okay. All right, so we're including 8 with that amendment. 10 we'll bypass for now because it has the person who said, there's one person who said they felt it should be taken out. We may have time to come back to that, maybe not. Okay. I have to say that bothers me a little bit. I know that this is, you know, that comment is
Number 10.
Number 10 is an important one. It crops up all the time. Consider paying communities to engage with the permitting process in some way. So I know it's come up in other parts of this document as well. So I just want to mark that. I don't want to just blithely pass it up. We talk about it a lot. So I just want to flag that. I mean, do people want to discuss that to see if we can come to consensus about that or not?
Do we want to discuss this evening? You mean?
Yes, like, do we want to have a recommendation to EEA and its agencies on the payment of communities to engage? When the state goes out to communities and asks them for their resources, or, do we, the EJC want to comment on that?
I think that would require a lot more discussion because the idea is good, but it also could lead to negative consequences. I'm just thinking about how, I'm not that familiar with state process, but like at a city level, how, appointees to city committees, sometimes they become very, like people join them for different reasons and it becomes kind of insular. So I think the idea that it's really important to support community members, and that participatory processes need resources, I agree. But
I liked the second bullet point. I thought that was a thoughtful way to consider how do you address, what are the barriers to participation? And I thought that was a really constructive comment.
Mhm.
Because I'm with you, Rishi, this kind of comes up a lot
Comes
in
up
our
all-
work too.
yeah.
And I'm always at odds. I think there's pros and cons to
Right.
payments, but like thinking about more in terms of like, what are the barriers to participation and is there a way to address those barriers? Seems to me like a more meaningful way to thread the needle here.
Yeah, I
agree
think-
with that.
Yeah, either two, the second or third bullet point.
Yeah.
I think, because it needs a lot more discussion how you do that.
Are you all proposed, or am I hearing people proposing that we take the second bullet point and make it the comment? Is that what folks are saying?
I mean, I don't have a problem with the second bullet, but I guess just to pick up on what Lydia was saying, that I do think that our comments should include something that speaks to community engagement. I do think that, how that happens, there's a lot of like nuance to it that needs to be brought up. But I do know that in terms of paying community members, in different parts of, not necessarily a particularly like a permitting process, but paying community members to participate in other types of like planning processes, like is an active conversation with
Mhm.
some stuff with like MVP program, that's something that people are actively grappling with now. So I do think that we should weigh in on it in some way. And I think I like the second bullet. I agree with it. And I think there's just like more. that can
Maybe
be
like
said about that.
including the possibility of stipends or payment for engagement.
So we could make the comment the second bullet and then say including and
Yeah.
make that what is written as the comment right now.
Well, and it's also very specific about the permitting process.
I agree.
Which I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
can be broadened a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Or should be broadened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my worry is to just say that it sort of seems like it could be subject to corruption. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it
Or-
would be good to know, I think maybe the comment was submitted by somebody who's not in attendance of the meeting tonight, but it would just be good to know permitting process specifically, like what were you trying to get at? Like,
Right.
because maybe there's something that we're missing
Mhm.
in terms of why
that was so.
that was called out.
so
Yeah.
focused, yeah.
I like substituting state processes because there's so many ways in which I think the state interacts with neighborhoods and communities, in grant making. So it would be nice if we could find out more about the way that a grant could be especially effective by polling folks, who are members of these community organizations. Whether it's permitting and citing, whether it's NEPA. So in that way, it seems narrower than the ways in which the state constantly seeks help, from-
I agree with that, amendment, changing it to state processes. I think that's a good broadening of it.
Okay.
Rishi, there's 10 minutes left.
I know, what are we gonna do, you guys?
Create a working group.
No, don't,
But
make it a
not
working
officially.
group.
Maybe someone volunteer to create a working group.
Well, let's get to this 10. So let's make this, are we making the second bullet the comment and then putting the other one as a clause underneath it? Okay. Is that what everybody's agreed to up on the screen as well?
That's what it sounds like.
What do you think, Ari? Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Cheryl? See you up there? Yes? Okay, great. All right, I think everybody's, okay, so we're gonna do that. We'll make that into the main comment and we'll make that a sub. All right, so now we're gonna move on to 11, we can't really discuss. 12,
I don't think 11's really a discussion. It's just making a comment that it's true. So I think we can just,
But someone put B in there just to remove it.
Someone wanted to remove it.
but the discussion notes seem,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. I mean, we could possibly change it and say something like where relevant, create regional,
Mhm.
you know, that could take in the,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
okay. Folks agree with that for 11
Yes.
on the
Yes.
screen? Okay. So where relevant, all right, all right. And then we've got, I think we can agree on 12. Is that correct? On screen, can we agree on 12? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So. Can we agree on 13? Or is that mostly,
The comments are just questions.
yeah. There are other training comments in here where people have just said quite plainly, internal staff training is really important, you know, which I think is
Yeah.
actually what the
I think
comment
that's
is,
an important-
right? So I would propose that we take out 13 and include, I do recall reading one or two that were like that, just including those.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Although I think this, sorry, I think this was one of my comments, maybe, or maybe I was asked about the training because, well, I don't know, maybe this is relevant to this process or not, but like, we have no way to assess the quality of these trainings. So like, for example, you know, each of us had to do these online trainings for this body, the
Right,
open meeting law, and
right.
then there was one other one, which was just like listening to a
Ethics.
few videos.
Right,
Yeah,
the
the
ethics,
ethics,
listening
yeah.
to a few videos, clicking through and doing a quiz. I do not think that is in any way adequate to the type of training that would even be necessary for an EJ strategy. So this was what my just, that was, so it's just trainings are important
Yeah.
and like, it has to be a good training. That's
And maybe more
with all
appropriately,
due
a
respect to
relevant
the
training.
creation of
And a
those
true one.
trainings, like, it's just, and more than that is needed, but just like,
like it can't be learning how to ice skate or something.
Right, exactly.
right, like,
Relevant
just,
training.
So-
just trying to convey, yeah.
So I'm looking at 29, which is that very simple statement about training, where it says the staff training piece is important. I think we would say, I mean, I love that comment because I wish they could all just come in like that.
Yes.
But I think what we're trying to say is effective, meaningful, and relative, and relevant training is important. Effective, meaningful, and relevant. I mean, we could collapse all of the training comments into that. We could say we want to see that the state put resources behind that, which is also a duplicated comment, you know.
Right.
And they have to be mandatory, you know, there has to be some requirement that people are at least
Right.
aware. I mean,
At least
basic.
live instruction.
Yeah, they're not gonna be, you know. Maybe people think that they're not relevant to their work, but in fact, these trainings probably are. And so, you know, you want to make sure that people are at least aware of what the strategy is for their agency and why they're being asked to do certain things, the way they're being asked to do, or, you know.
Yeah, I actually prefer 13 over 29 just because it gets to more of the meat of like the relevancy, the effectiveness, the why. Whereas trainings are important is just like such a truism. I don't know that that is much of a helpful comment.
5 minutes remaining.
Okay. This is what, so I hear what you're saying, Namrata, and I've copied down some of these adjectives. I think that's the grammatical position of these words: mandatory, live, relevant, in person, and meaningful. So we could include that we could say throughout the document, there are references to trainings that are or will be given to staff. We recommend that they should be, and then follow with that list of adjectives. Does that make sense? Okay.
I like that.
Okay, I'm asking the question again with 5 minutes left. We've gone through some of these, I think a third of them. Not even. What should we do with this document? One thing we can do is, when I was working with our consultant on this, who had this great idea to create this table, we took verbatim these comments as much as we could. And one thing that we could do, and I don't know if people on this council are willing to do this, I could go through these again and collapse these comments so that they're not redundant, and also to try to keep to as authentically stated as they are, and see if we can't make these comments half or even less as there are, and that we schedule one more short Zoom meeting where we look at that. You know, I could hand out that document to you ahead of time and see if it captures some of those. Does that, what do folks on the screen think?
I think that sounds excellent.
Agreed. Yeah, I trust you to consolidate and,
Yeah. And retain.
yeah, I think you've done a great job so far in capturing everything.
And then those that have some question that need discussion, is the idea that we will have another meeting to go through those?
So Madeline, that's a piece here. So some of these, like what we just did here today, all the ones that have like 1C next to them, I'm just going to include those.
Okay.
Okay,
good,
kind
yeah,
of like what
all
you
right,
were,
yeah,
if folks agree, that's what I'll do.
okay.
Okay. The other ones, maybe what we do is really just talk about the ones that have the B in them, where somebody wanted to take them at one or two, maybe who knows how many. Some, it's divided, right? Some people wanted to take them out, some people didn't. So that's not as many for sure. You know, that's like about 10 or 12. And what we could do is have a 1-hour meeting sometime soon, talk about the ones that we categorized as B, agree on them there, let the rest drop off. If we can't agree, we can't agree. And then that's going to be our set of comments.
That's good. And it may be that some of those that are recommended for removal were because they were redundant. So as you go through,
Yeah.
you might have even less.
Yeah.
So at the risk of like elongating the process further, which I don't want to do, I'm just wondering though, just in terms of our influence and like, where do we really want to like, you know, having what will still be kind of a laundry list of comments means that things could get lost in that process. And
Yeah.
so like, are there things that we think are just so important that we want to like really sort of make them almost like our lead comment, like the framing, I guess, of how we think about this. I'm just throwing that out there because I know if I got a long, even condensed, I would probably, you know, I'll treat them with all equal weight. And is that what we want?
Like offering some kind of overall comments or something like that.
Yeah, something that like, you know, we really think it's super important that this be addressed and this be addressed early and often in the document and like prioritize it.
Like community engagement, perhaps.
Like maybe
Yeah.
community, I mean, like that's one of the few things that we've spent a little bit more time.
And I think the
and effort
agencies,
towards them.
you know, the EJ task force and the agencies they're representing are really grappling with with metrics.
I do
They're
too.
really struggling with
Yeah.
metrics.
Yeah.
And I, you know, there's a lot of interest in that. Even you can see it in our discussions.
Mhm.
we were trying to figure out, do we want outcomes or do we want outputs? You know, what are we going to measure with metrics? I mean, I think if we had advice about that to the agencies, like that split between outputs and outcomes, I mean, we would have to define those in some way that we can all understand. That would be helpful to them.
Or even like a mandate around, because like outcomes is just, it's a thorny issue across the board, like being in philanthropy, like that's the holy grail, right? And for us, that would be the holy grail is the actual outcome. And it's thorny. It's not easy to figure out like what is really gonna lead to that outcome. And so like even sort of having the agency, as they think about this document, spend time and resources on trying and helping figure out how do you think about outcomes? What are appropriate measures of outcomes? I think that would be really valuable.
So those, I'm just hearing two areas so far, community engagement and the metrics as the things that we could focus on in these comments. And then I'm hearing that folks want to have another version of this with me and our consultant trying our best to retain the authenticity of these comments, and that we would focus on the ones that people didn't really agree on versus the others. Do you folks think we can do that in a 1-hour meeting? So, you know, have,
Try.
yeah, you know, have some time to talk about these 2 or 3 main topics and then like say the 10 comments that are contentious. Yeah.
That would be
Okay.
great.
Okay. So then why don't we, if we all,
Can you remind us, what is the deadline for comment submission for us?
it's the comment period is open till the 17th, Kalila, but you know, things that are submitted, they'll be considered. I mean, it's the EJ office considering it. So I don't think that people would, we wouldn't do that for any comments that come in. You know, we wouldn't. Did I lose my? Okay. So could I just hear from folks on the screen that they're okay with that plan? We're going to focus on the ones that we didn't, somebody wanted to take out, you know, that were classified as B on these tables. 2 main topics of community engagement and perhaps metrics. And if somebody thinks of another, we can add that to the discussion, but that we could try to do that in a 1-hour-long meeting pretty soon, you know, in the next few weeks. And I'll put together another document and send it out to you before that meeting. So if folks will have the ability to turn that over, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Great idea. I like it.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
Okay, well, with that, then we do have a few moments at the end of the meeting to open it up for any comments from the public. So here we go, we're on a new screen. So let me do that, open up the floor, and can you also please state your name for the purpose of the minutes? If anybody has something that they'd like to say to the council. We can be here until 8:30. We will lose interpreters before that, but we can be here until 8:30. We have the room until then.
To any of our online attendees, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. I also see that somebody has submitted a couple of comments in our Q&A. If you would like to make verbal comments, please raise your hand. If I don't see you raise your hand, I will read them out loud for you. And once you raise your hand, I will go in and give you the ability to unmute yourself. So Paulina, you should be allowed to talk right now.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Paulina Casasola. I use she, her pronouns. I work as the climate justice organizer at Clean Water Action. And I would like to thank the members of the council for their time tonight and the EA for making these meetings happen and making sure they're happening in our communities. However, I would like to mention that the EJ table is not participating in this process in solidarity with Green Roots and the critique of how this meeting moved forward without a just process. We hope to see an equitable and participatory process for decision-making for these community meetings in the future. And we hope we can keep working closely with EEA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paulina. I mean, for sure, that is our sincere wish too. And we hear what you're saying about today, and we'll continue to work together about it. Thank you for that.
All right, I can now read.
I also just want to say, Kessel, if you could, so these are public comments addressing the council. So I also want to, leave it open so that anybody on the council could please respond to these comments as well. Now that we're in person, I feel like we can have a little bit more of that dynamic of folks want to address the council as a whole. So just want to put that out there for us.
In that vein, I'm just kind of curious, because I kind of wasn't aware of the request until maybe a couple hours ago when I saw an email from Green Roots. So I'm just curious about what happened prior to that, what the process was, and because it seemed like a reasonable request that we changed the order of the agenda, and I was just kind of curious why it didn't happen.
It's a good question, and we had put a lot of work in and with finding this venue, and actually Green Roots had helped us obtain this venue, and we were happy to have it here. And then, January 25th was the first night that we had, and Mayor Wu, was delivering her State of the City address that night. So we moved it to this night. And then there were some issues that came up around scheduling. At any rate, Namrata, it's a good question, but when we posted it under the open meeting law, we posted it with this agenda. We couldn't change it within 48 hours, so there was that issue. But really, what's key here is that when these meetings got taken out of the Zoom format to the in-person format, which is what we're moving towards now, in the Zoom format, having the public comments come in at the end made sense, because we felt that people would be at home and they would be able to comment on what the council had deliberated on, and they would have opinions about it, and it would help educate the council as well. And so when I was scheduling it here for this meeting, I just stayed with that format. But I think in the future, we should have the public comments first, because people are, if they're going to come in person, it makes sense to do that. So this got caught up in the first time that we're having this virtual meeting. We're having it with a different dynamic. Under open meeting law, we had certain constraints. So we're really grateful to Green Roots for suggesting this venue. I hope to meet here again. Maybe we'll meet in the cafeteria so that we can have food there in the cafeteria and we don't have to, go out to get, and going forward, that's what I'd like to have happen. And we're all just learning here. Accessibility is really important to me personally. And it's really important to EEA, and I know it's important to the Healy administration. I don't know if the secretary wants to say more about that, but that's why when these council meetings started in July, people thought I was crazy, but I said, we are running 6 language lines and ASL. And I had folks internally in July look at me and say, how much is that going to cost? And I said, that's what we got to do, because that's what this council is about. So, there are glitches along the way. Certainly this may have been one of them, but we're all people here and we're trying to make it work. So Paulina, I thank you for your comment. And most of all, I thank you for the opportunity that I could say my piece about this, because that's not how we want it to be going forward. We're partners here and we're not going to get this done without all of us working together.
I actually have a suggestion that maybe, I know next week we have a listening session in Chinatown, which is in person. And I feel like these in-person sessions, if we really want to get more grassroots community input, it's better to not combine it with the EJ council meeting, which is like very detailed and, whether you
Dry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually better to separate and have like the listening session that's just a listening session, which is what happened at the bowling building in Roxbury, right? But we need to really make sure that the word gets out about those listening sessions so that people know what it is and actually come and talk. And yeah. And
Yeah,
I had a question.
Oh, go ahead. No, go
And
ahead.
actually, I had a question for the secretary, since she's here, about, like, I think in terms of, how do you see the role of the EJ Council supporting the work, supporting your work in the future? Like, we know right now, we're very focused on getting our comments on the strategy. But, that's just we're going to do that. And then that, there will be, formal comments on this document. But the bigger question is really like, how are we changing the world and how the way that the state is operating? And what's our role in that beyond defining what an EJ population is?
Can I just add to that too? Because I think part of the dynamic is that, this council is happening at a time where there are really important current issues and projects up for debate in EJ communities about whether or not they're going to move forward, whether or not we're actually, going to break free from the fossil fuel infrastructure. And people, I think that, so just like there's topics that I think people are interested to hear the EJ Council's perspective on, and because it's also a public space for people to express their concerns and questions that they have about that.
Yeah, I think as Rishi said, I think we are sort of feeling this out as we go along. And I think everyone would be really interested to hear what you think is important. And I think that's a really important point. I think the way we were envisioning it is that when we were, for instance, doing rulemaking, or when we were trying to come up with new programs, that we could come to you and say, we're thinking about doing this. Do you think it's the right way to do it? Should we make modifications? I mean, we were really sort of imagining a back and forth advisory group that we could come and say, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? So that's sort of what I had in my mind. But like I said, this is kind of a flexible thing. It's for a back and forth, and it's for a forum for you to talk to us and for us to seek advice from you.
I just want to add one thing too, because Lydia, you're hitting a key piece here, that the EJ Council has the statutory mandate to do some things. We have to do these things. And it's true that in some respect, a free-flowing stakeholder conversation is a different thing. It's less restricted and it's more raw and it's more related to people's like everyday experience in their lives, of course. And it's not, based in policy. It has the effect, it's affected by policy, but it's not. So I totally get that there is these two purposes here. And we always have to, in these EJC meetings, keep in mind the statutory mandate. We have to get that done. But I also feel like there is a thing with these roving EJC meetings, which I'm going for, where I want to be in that neighborhood and I want to hear, because EJ work is so based in geography, every single neighborhood has a different concern based on the history of that neighborhood and who's living there. And so that is an education for us as the council to go and hear from that neighborhood. It is an education.
Yeah.
We need that information from them on an ongoing basis as we're doing their work. So I still very much want to keep that place-based stakeholder piece to keep the council connected to folks on the ground. So that's, I don't know if you wanted to respond to that. I have one more thing that I wanted to say.
Well,
about-
I totally
Yeah.
agree. I wasn't
Okay.
saying to cut that at all.
Yeah.
I was just saying have them be different agendas.
Different things, yeah.
And actually, I think we should be at those listening sessions as much as possible. I
I
was
see.
kind of disappointed that I think I was the only one that showed up at the
Yeah.
bowling building.
Yeah, I was so happy
Yeah.
to see you.
It was pretty lousy weather. but-
Yeah. no,
The other thing that I would add is, this is not a substitute for all the very many public meetings that we need to have and listening sessions that we need to have for many different things. Often many of them are required that there be public hearings, that there be listening sessions for individual projects, for individual thought. This is an addition to all of those things that are already required to be done or want to be done.
And there's a piece about, I think, where we are right here in the beginning of this administration. We're at a place where there's a lot of anger out there for things that have happened in the past. And part of stakeholder engagement as state officials, and now, we're in positions of authority as members of the council, is the ability to hear from and tolerate that emotion of anger because people have it. We have to be in that uncomfortable space where we can receive the comment and have folks who've had their lives affected tell us so that things can change. Like, we can't get past to the changing until we hear some of that stuff, and a lot of it. So I just want to say that's how I think of stakeholder engagement. It's not like as if we're going to immediately hear something in stakeholder engagement. We may not have an answer. We may not be able to have a quote solution. You can't fix things that have been generations in the making and have, the pain of real lives and our children's health. We can't fix them through a state, but we can do that first step. I mean, that's what the community engagement is about. And I think that's also what turning the culture of our agencies and these councils that have authority and a place in the state infrastructure, like, we should be on the forefront of turning those cultures around. That's how I view this work.
May I speak?
Hi,
Yes,
Art.
Ari's on. Echoing what you just said, Rishi. Yeah, this is, I didn't expect this to turn into this. It feels like we're just healing the wounds of a hurt nation and systemic racism. So here we are all at the table trying to figure this out, and there isn't always answers, but as a collective group, that's what we're tasked to do. And it's a big task. I mean, I'm up for it, but I'm just saying this has turned out to be much more than I think anyone really expected. And it's going to be a process, and people's feelings are going to get hurt along the way. And that's what this is about. And I think we could do it as a group if we all remember that.
We do have a question and comment from online community.
Hello, Catherine. You should be able to unmute yourself now. You have 2 minutes to speak. We cannot hear you if you are trying to speak. I will I'm going to remove your permission to speak and then grant it again and see if that changes anything. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself again.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Thank you. I just want to say I've been to a few of these Zoom meetings. I think it's great. It allows access to so many of us that can't make it. And I know you've been out all over the state, but you've never come to Southeastern Mass. And I live in a neighborhood that has, an elderly disabled housing complex. And so these Zoom meetings are great, but I just happened to find out about it. I live in an environmental justice zone. We do have some big issues here that, we've reached out to government agencies and haven't had any help. So I just hope in the future you'd consider coming down to this region of the state and seeing what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Can you tell us what town you're in, please?
I'm in Taunton,
You're in
Massachusetts.
Taunton. I
Yep.
think we've talked before at a previous Zoom meeting, and because of that conversation, I put Taunton on our list of,
Oh, thank you.
of towns that we wanted to bring one of the EJ Council meetings to. So I hope that happens soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of, can I ask a question? Kind of to the point that Catherine was raising, I'm curious about the capacity to do outreach for the listening sessions, for the EJ Council meetings. Do you feel like the current mechanism that we have in place is working, is adequate?
I wish we had better mechanisms in place, Kalila. Like, I wish there was, I feel like we're constantly pushing. Lydia, I mean, I don't know, this is a thing that we had asked for your help on too in Chinatown. I feel like we're constantly.
We made our own flyer and have been getting it out and telling people, because I don't know how people find out about
Yeah.
this otherwise. Who's just surfing the state website?
It's not enough.
No one is.
No, it's not enough.
Which we do all the time.
No. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to do was started, you know, could we get people to come to social media in a way that we could put something
Yeah,
out
we've been
on-
putting it on social
Yeah.
media too. in
But
English
also
and
like
Chinese.
old fashioned postings, but
Yeah.
to answer your question, Kalila, I think we have so much more to do there. And I want ideas on how to do that. I mean, we have all of the textbooks, best practices ideas. But it's hard to know if any of them are working.
Rishi, this is our communication director, so she might have some thoughts.
Hi,
This is Maria Hardiman.
it's great to meet all of you and to be a part of this. I'm excited to be here. I'm super new to this, so I actually have a question. Is this funded? Do we have like a,
By statute,
Yeah.
it is not funded.
okay,
That's what was in the
interesting.
language.
Because so I've done some outreach in a political capacity for events, and I understand the challenges that come, in particular using social media to reach people. That's not a space that I think, especially the audiences we're looking for, are on. But it's something, you know, something we can explore going forward. One of our radio ads for
That's great. Yeah.
you know, multicultural radio in the regions that you're trying to visit. We can build those press lists. It costs money. It's not massive, but something to offer. And then this is not my area of expertise, but something in your networks may be worth asking about. A lot of multilingual communities are on WhatsApp spaces and Facebook groups. And, you know, those are not necessarily places I'm present in, but something worth exploring going forward. If you have stakeholders that you're working with in different communities, like what's the Facebook group or WhatsApp group that everybody's on? Something to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are great ideas, and they're definitely, in the last several months, we've been telling folk, you know, in all of the various ways, like for MIPA, for this type of outreach. Pat Spence, who's at the council. Pat, are you up there? She's often brought up the issue of how senior involvement, you know, getting the word out to seniors through community centers is a way to pull in voices that have institutional knowledge and they've lived the history in their neighborhood, and they're also able to pull people in, you know? So
I agree. I'm hearing what you're saying. I absolutely agree. And that's.
Pat, you had the comment first, that's why.
Oh, no, I'm just agreeing with you, Yeah, very important.
This is actually one of our comments in our comments on the strategy was about this, you know, also use of ethnic media and ethnic social media. Like, for example, the Chinese often use WeChat. So we put out like a flyer and a post on WeChat and as well as Instagram in English. And
I mean, I think
had
this-
a question, actually, I was going to ask you afterwards, but I just realized it, you know, because we really haven't been bringing a lot of Chinese speakers to these meetings until now. But the session in Chinatown, most people actually speak Cantonese and not Mandarin. But there's both Cantonese and Mandarin. And I'm wondering if we can have Cantonese interpretation. And
Carlene and I we're thinking about offering both.
Yeah.
Lydia, we were going to ask you.
That would be great. if
Would you
could.
rather have both?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
good. All right. Thank you.
We have a few comments that have come in the Q&A, and I'm going to read some of them. From David Dow, they say, I have been asked by the Social and Environmental Action Committee at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Falmouth of Massachusetts, Department DEP's Title V Septic System / Watershed Permit Proposal has an environmental justice component. Since this program will cost Cape Cod towns and water districts to expend between 3 and 7 billion over the next 20 to 30 years. SEAC wants to organize a program on the Massachusetts DEP proposal and has other EJ concerns as a community of faith. They also say, last Sunday's Boston Globe contained an advertisement sponsored by environmental non-government organizations urging action on nitrogen pollution from septic systems, which create water quality problems and the loss of marine habitat in Cape Cod's impacted embayments. Falmouth, where I live, has 14 nitrogen-sensitive embayments that run from inland kettle ponds to coastal embayments, which are connected by a combination of river and groundwater. Thus, ingredient pollution includes both nitrogen and phosphorus. There are also a couple questions that have come in. One person.
Just one moment, Kessel. So that was David Dow's comment?
Yes.
Okay.
There were
Hi.
two of them.
Okay, there were two of them. David, hello again. Nice to hear from you again. Thank you for your comment. I just want to say a person that you might contact about that, the Title V issues down there might be Deneen Simpson. She is the Director of Environmental Justice for DEP. So the way in which that Title V issue is intersecting with EJ communities down there is something that she could probably help you with. Her email is on the EJ website, but you could also just write me and I'll send you her information to be in touch with her directly, if that's helpful to you.
There are a couple other questions.
Okay, thank you, Kessel.
Okay. What kinds of agencies will be implementing ideas and guidelines from this document? And I believe this document was the comments that y'all were going through.
It will be all, the document pertains to all 6 of EEA's agencies that they oversee agriculture, energy, environment, and climate. And then in addition, the strategy also will guide the 4 EEA internal offices, the Office of Technical Assistance, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, the Coastal Zone Management, and our climate work through the Municipal Vulnerable Preparedness Program, as well as 2 external organizations we work with a lot, the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center and also the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. I feel like I'm missing one, but it is the whole family of EEA authorities that the strategy is seeking to guide in a consistent manner.
Thank you. Another question is, what are some examples of other actions that incentives may be provided for, like the ones described in comment 10?
Kessel, will you say that again? What is the what that's?
What are some examples of other actions that incentives may be provided for, like the ones described in comment 10?
What are some other?
That incentives can be.
I think we talked about it more in terms of removing barriers as opposed to created incentives.
When maybe the person's referring to the fact that we opened up it from permitting processes to other state processes. So maybe what are the other state processes that we're talking about?
If that's the question, I think it would be permitting, citing, grant disbursement, enforcement,
Planning. process.
planning. Yeah, certainly for those CZM aspects. Regulation, developing regulations from the authority we're given by statutes. So it's sort of the whole host of what the state would do. I mean, that's what we would need to do thoughtfully, I think, with that comment. So does everyone agree with that? Yeah. Is there another
Yes.
question?
Somebody asked, if Lawrence isn't on your visit list, it should be. Is it?
It is, and I have a feeling I know who's asking me that question. And he had me put it on that list, and I did.
Thank you. And we have another comment from David Dow, which came in a little bit later, and it says UUFF-SEAC, which I believe is Universal Unitarian Fellowship of Falmouth, Massachusetts, is engaged with the faith community environmental network of the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative and interacts with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe on local concerns in the Wilquat Bay watershed. And I apologize if I've mispronounced anything. And that is the comment.
That's the comment, okay.
Oh, somebody else just commented something. And I would like to remind people that if they would like to speak themselves, feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you, but I'm also happy to read things out loud. All right. Someone said, Amanda McNeil said, another approach to get the word out about listening sessions and opportunities to participate in this process is to reach out directly to community-based organizations or CBOs. They often know the best way to reach community members and mobilize them. I think engaging CBOs also empowers the communities.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Agreed, yeah.
Question.
We have another question.
Kessel, we have somebody here in the audience.
Oh, I apologize. Yes.
I don't know, it feels like formality, I suppose, but I was just gonna say exactly what Amanda McNeil said. I mean, thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Zeus Smith. I'm the policy advocate with the Charles River Watershed Association. And I mean, I came to the previous EJC listening session and it was wonderful. And in terms of getting the word out, I just wanted to reiterate, I think Charles River Watershed Association has been working on language justice ourselves and translating a lot of our materials. And so I think utilizing networks like the ones that we've been cultivating could be a great way of getting out the word about sessions like this one. I mean, we actually put the word out about this session, which doesn't look like too many people were able to follow in person. But nonetheless, I think that really is a great way of putting the word out because I think these are so important and hearing people talking has been useful for me and I'm sure it's useful for all of you. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Alan.
All right. We have a few more comments. Is Salem on your list? We would love to have you come and we respectfully ask for having public comments at the beginning. Pat, this is from Pat Gozemba, co-chair of the Salem Alliance for the Environment. SAFE will help publicize.
My answer is it is now. And we will, can that person send some contact info through a chat or something, Kessel? And we can be in touch with them.
Yes, if you would like to send your contact information in the Q&A box.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Someone else says, I would love to throw Gloucester in the ring as a possible. I am not originally from Massachusetts. I apologize.
See, now we're gonna have to meet every 2 weeks if we're gonna fit it all.
As a possible meeting site, Gloucester's EJ neighborhoods are important regionally to Cape Ann in terms of providing housing and services for EJ communities. I'm happy to help in any way I can. Thanks for your work.
Will you also have that person, Kessel, just put in there?
Yes, if
comment.
you could
Thank you.
also
Yeah.
put your information, that would be great. Yes, and people are putting their information in the chat.
Okay, awesome.
That's all the questions and comments we have for now.
We're at 8:21. We can give it a minute and see if there's any others online that come in.
There's still 249 cities and towns that haven't put in their.
Amanda McNeil has raised their hand. You should be able to unmute yourself now, Amanda.
Hi, sorry, I just put my comment in earlier because I kind of thought maybe that was like the going trend. But I just wanted to follow up on the community-based organization idea. And I think it is something that maybe just to expand on it a little bit, if there's a way, just I think everybody kind of has a network of community-based organizations. And I do really think it's the people with boots on the ground that often have their finger on the pulse of what is going on. And that includes like how to get information out to the communities. So like, I think just an easy way to do this. I know like the radio ads were mentioned. That's sometimes in a very expensive way to go about things. But I think just putting a list together of the networks that everybody has across the state of Massachusetts and just getting the word out to like a list of organizations to then disperse that into their communities, I think is a really like maybe not difficult lift to do and like an easy way to just get the word out. And I just think that really should be considered. And I think it's also a really great way to empower these community-based organizations that are oftentimes already, in the trenches trying to do this work. So I just wanted to like reiterate that and then maybe kind of think like for next steps, just even getting a list of these organizations together, like you could just send an email even just like, hey, this is happening. It's not that it's would be the perfect like solution, but maybe just a way to better get the word out to make sure that everybody's voices are really truly being heard.
Amanda, thank you for that comment. We actually at EEA, we have a EJ organization list that we're constantly updating. It's hard to keep it up to date. We use it all the time. I would say we use it probably, almost on a daily basis. At least one of our agencies or offices uses that EJ org list. But it does get out of date. It's hard to keep up. The other thing I wanted to say is a lot of the CBOs that we work with often tell us how they are already short-staffed and very overworked. And for when we ask them to, hey, will you help us get the word out? That's adding to a lot of their workload already. So we try to stay cognizant of that. And we know that there are partners in doing this work and they're actually leading the work in a lot of instances. So to put the context of one of our discussions here that we had about the payment to these community groups, it's in the context of that partnership that we have with the community-based organizations that we're having that conversation. What is a good way, devoid of graft, maybe Lydia, that we're talking about that we could enable some type of compensation for when these community-based organizations do translations for us sometimes, or get the word out for us, or even make paper copies and post things, on the church down the street. I mean, that's all people's time, and when they already have their own work to do that the CBO has been formed as a nonprofit to do as part of their mission. So these are the things that we're trying to figure out. It's the next step. I mean, we've got a lot of partnerships, and now I feel like, okay, everybody's got to treat each other right around that. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, so just a thought on that, then maybe the comment in here that we were discussing, because that kind of centers the comment on on organizations being compensated for their time, CBOs to help get the word out. I think the comment in here was more individuals, if I'm remembering correctly. So if we do want to make that kind of a comment, we should maybe discuss it in our next call Because I do think that it is important to compensate nonprofits and other community-based organizations for the work that they do.
And Reed Porter, the attorney who we heard from today, and I have had conversations about, how can we define those groups that we're gonna offer payment to, are they nonprofit groups that are registered with the Secretary of State's office, perhaps, those type of things. So I hear what you're saying, Madeline. I mean, I'll make that little note in here. Okay.
Yeah, I think just to add, I think this is like that conversation is important for like the council as an individual body, but then across EEA, because all of the success of all of these strategies relies on meaningful public participation. And so I think, there is obviously like the angle of, clarifying partnerships and payment and whatever and opportunities that can be moved through community-based organizations. And I also feel like the state needs to recognize that it needs to add additional capacity to be able to help supplement that work. Like it just can't all be, kind of devolved onto community groups. And I'm not saying that that's what you're suggesting, but I'm like, okay, every public process, it's like, oh, how are we getting people where, and it's like, the state has to figure that out about like what its offering is into that. And it has to be like a 21st century sophisticated set of solutions that really matches like the nature of the competing interests of people, right? So.
And a resourced one. I mean, and I think this is something we talked about too, is how much we need in terms of state resources to support this work.
Yeah.
We're going to
absolutely.
be.
More resources have to be devoted to that for sure.
We have time for one more comment. Kristen, you should be allowed to unmute yourself now. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your time tonight. I just wanted to maybe offer that you don't want to make this harder or more expensive than it needs to be. When you're going into a community, the school department knows what languages they speak because they have to provide those languages. They know whether or not you need ASL because they have to provide that too. You can tell from the maps or, the schools better than the maps in some cases like ours, that, where the grocery stores are, where the religious centers are, where the community centers are, where the senior centers are, where the library is, grocery stores, liquor stores, bus stops, T stops if you're out in Eastern Mass. You guys know where people are. You send out an intern, you send out a scout, you flyer everywhere, directing them to a website where the social media stuff is. Hey, if you and your family and your friends are concerned, you share it with your networks and your social media, and then you send it out to the school systems, every science teacher, every superintendent, medical providers. You put some in the hospitals, in the ERs, everyone who's concerned about it shows up. I mean, this is how we do outreach, right? We're not reinventing the wheel. You know how to do that. I'm just saying, don't make it harder than it is. You guys can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the point about the language information that's housed with the school systems. And we use that actually in our environmental justice maps right now, but you're absolutely right. So thank you for that. I think, Kessel, we're at the end.
Yeah, we're at 8:30.
So if, we have a plan for going forward. At this point, I just want to open up the floor, see if we should have somebody make a motion to adjourn in a second. And we can do that, and I will send out some more information about a subsequent meeting with the next version of the comments.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Namrata moved and Lydia seconded. And I guess we'll take a roll call and see if we're all in agreement. Kalila, do you want to stay for a lot longer?
I think I'm ready to go.
Madeline, how about you?
I'm ready.
Okay. Melissa, how about you?
I'm ready. Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yes.
Caroline.
Yes.
Marcos isn't here. I am ready to adjourn. Pat.
Let's go.
All right, and Ari.
I'm ready.
All right, thank you all, and
All
we
right.
will see you next time. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Peace, Ganache.